Hey friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm back with another Sylvanclaw review. This time we're going to be looking at their latest collection called Into the Wizard's Keep. If you missed it from my first video, Sylvanclaw is a new indie brand based in Louisiana, and they have this more fantastical, whimsical approach to their collections. They come in these 15 milliliter bottles, and in even more exciting news, they recently switched over to paddle-shaped brushes. So I'm very excited about that, but I will save more of my thoughts for the end. For now, let's just get into the swatches. The first polish we have is Crystal Gaze, which is described as a lavender polish packed with holographic glitters and an orange to pink shifting shimmer. This one had a really nice formula that was easy to apply. It was a little bit on the thinner consistency, but I guess still pigmented at the same time, while also being very packed with those little holographic glitters. The first coat is a bit sheer, but you can just see how much glitter payoff you get, so I got really great coverage on just 2 coats alone. I personally didn't see much visible nail line, so I feel like this would be a solid 2-coater, especially if you have short nails. Next we have Egoots, which is a dark teal jelly packed with these multichrome flakes that shift between green to purple to blue and a scattered hot pink holographic glitter. So even though this is described as a dark teal, I personally would just call this like a very, very dark green. I guess it has a little bit of a teal undertone, but to me, I would say it leans more emerald. Either way, it is a really beautiful polish. I love the little flakies in here. This had a very similar formula to the last polish where it was, a little sheer because of the jelly base, but it does build up really, really beautifully. I think because it is so densely packed with the flakies, you can get really great coverage on just 2 coats, but I did want to show this built up in 3 where it's like fully opaque and it just is so mesmerizing. The next shade we have is Candlelit Scrawl, which is described as an inky purple jelly-like polish filled with orange to red shimmer and a scattering of gold reflective glitters. So this is kind of your typical red shimmer in a purple base combo. No surprise, it is gorgeous. It may not look super promising on the first coat because again, it's a little bit sheer, maybe not the most even, but I think it evened out really nicely on 2 coats. And because it's such a dark color, you can definitely wear it in 2 coats alone, or you could do a 3rd coat if you wanted to deepen it even more or get just fuller opacity. So here's a little clip under flash and also out of focus so you can better see the reflective sparkle. And here's a clip in more extreme lighting so you can see the shift to orange. I could see a little bit more yellow in real life too. Up next we have Flame Wall, which is actually a bright pink toned red filled with orange shimmer and a subtle scattering of gold reflective glitters. I was definitely surprised to see that this was more of a pinky kind of red because in the bottle it definitely leans more like an orange red, and I was a little nervous about that since those shades don't usually suit me, but I really enjoyed this one so much. It again had another super fluid, easy to work with formula that was a little sheer on the first coat, but it was really even coverage, so I feel like if you wanted to, you could wear it in 1 coat, but I left it at 2. Next up we have Oh My Unicorn, which is a sheer pink polish loaded with color shifting iridescent flakies, blue shimmer, and a dusting of hollow glitters. Obviously, I was going to love this one. It is just so incredibly pretty. Not to sound like a broken record, but this also had a really lovely formula that was just so easy to paint with. Even though it is very light and sheer, it was really packed with those flakies and it looked beautiful on the first coat alone. Definitely very ethereal, but of course I built this up in 2 and I am obsessed. Next up we have Satin Starlight, which is described as a buildable deep blue jelly with a larger particle shimmer that shifts from orange to pink to yellow and a scattered holographic micro glitter. I was definitely really surprised by the color on this one. I was just expecting it to be a lot darker, but it is a jelly, so it's one of those shades that can get darker with the more coats that you do. But generally, I think I would call this in the cobalt blue kind of family as opposed to like a really dark navy blue. As expected, this had another really easy to work with formula, even for the second coat where I accidentally didn't grab enough polish on the brush and I had to dip back in. It ended up self-leveling really nicely. The only thing is the shimmer is pretty subtle. The next shade we have is Magic Eater, and this one is described as a blue-toned green that's packed with green reflective glitters and shimmers that shift from yellow to orange to green. I personally was going to call this like a very true mid-tone kind of green, a Kelly green, maybe grass green. I personally don't see it being blue-toned at all, but maybe that's just me. Either way, this one, again, had a very nice formula, very similar to the last shade or Candlelit Scrawl, where due to the jelly base, it's a little bit sheer on the first coat, but because it's a slightly deeper color, it does build up really beautifully on 2 coats alone. And no surprise, I love the green reflective glitter. The next shade is Frost Shard, which is basically the blue version of Oh My Unicorn, this one instead being a sheer icy blue, but still packed with those iridescent flakies, the pink shimmer, and a silver hollow micro glitter, which is actually more of a dusting where it's very, very fine. It's not like the individual glitter pieces, if that makes sense. But yeah, just like Oh My Unicorn, this one had another super beautiful formula. It was very light and sheer and ethereal on the first coat. You get that subtle wash of blue color, but it's still packed with all of those flakies and it builds up so beautifully. I just cannot get over how magical these flakies are. And rounding out the collection, we have Fallen Stars, which is a topper filled with these golden metallic star-shaped glitters, silver and gold holographic glitters, and gold reflective glitters. So hopefully you can tell from the bottle shot alone that this is packed with those little star-shaped glitters. I already got 2 stars on the first couple of swipes, and I did have to dip back in to get a third one just to, I don't know, even it out a little bit more. With a little bit of fishing, I was able to get even more star glitters, which is what you see over white, and then just going back in normally, I only got 1 glitter over the black, so you could set this upside down for a couple of minutes, but I feel like just fishing alone gets enough glitters out. And here are the 4 lighter shades of the collection worn as a skittle in 2 coats each. It's a little out of focus so you can better see the holographic sparkle, mainly in Crystal Gaze, since that one has actual holographic micro glitters as opposed to the dusting in the flaky polishes. But the flakies obviously shine in lower or indirect light. They just look so cool. And here is the darker half of the collection, again worn in 2 coats each, out of focus so you can see that gorgeous holographic sparkle. Again, I think the coverage on these is pretty great on 2 coats, but you could always do a third if you did want to deepen them a little bit more or just cover even more of your nail line. But because my nails are pretty short, I thought it looked fine. And lastly, I added Fallen Stars over these 4 shades just because I thought it would have the most contrast. Obviously, it's going to be hard to really make out the gold and silver hollow glitters and the gold reflective glitters outside of like flash lighting, but the stars themselves are super cute. Now for comparisons, we're starting with Crystal Gaze, and I was immediately reminded of ILNP's Fairy Dust, but that ended up being a little too deep and warm compared to Crystal Gaze, and the shimmer is also more red and just a bit stronger. So then I also thought of Mooncat's Into the Wishing Well, which definitely looked a lot closer, especially as far as the base color goes. Maybe it is a little bit cooler toned, but I feel like in certain angles it definitely looks pretty similar to Crystal Gaze. The main difference is that the hollow is a little bit more subtle. I also wanted to quickly show this next to Fauve's Transient Light and Apocalypse's Friends Don't Lie, because I thought they were going to be closer, but those two are more blurple leaning and more of a pink shimmer instead of orange. Next for Egoots, I wanted to show this next to Field of Wonder from the first Sylvanclaw collection. That one's more of that grassy Kelly green though, so I thought maybe closer, darker shades were Cracked Polish's Christmas Pickle and Holo Taco's Wicked Potion. So here you can see that Egoots does look a little bit more teal leaning, so then I thought maybe the closer polish was Mooncat's Velociraptor, which I don't have anymore, so I just have the swatch stick. That one I would say is more of a true teal. Egoots definitely does still have that like emerald kind of color that I mentioned before, and I think the main difference is that the flakies in Mooncat are iridescent as opposed to multichrome, but they have the same kind of colors, so they do look really similar. Next for Candlelit Scrawl, I was immediately reminded of ILNP's Hallucinate and Cirque's Coronation, both of which are purples with a red shimmer. Candlelit Scrawl does have that gold reflective glitter, while Cirque has a hollow dusting. And ILNP is just the shimmer, and it's a larger particle shimmer as well. So in the bottle, they definitely look like they could be dupes more or less. I would say that Hallucinate is definitely the closest because it's more of a blue-toned purple base color, while Coronation is more of a reddish berry kind of purple. So I did 2 coats of each here, and you can see that Candlelit Scrawl was the most sheer, so I ended up doing a 3rd coat of that one just to kind of match Hallucinate a little bit better. It's close, but not an exact dupe. Moving on to Flame Wall, I knew I had to show this next to Ladybird from the previous collection, which is a bright red jelly base polish with a gold shimmer and these matte hex glitters. So that's the biggest difference between them, but even as far as the base colors go, I think Ladybird is just a little bit deeper, more of a true red. For another bright red, I wanted to quickly show this next to Apocalypse's Dear Billy, which is their super bright red with a gold shimmer, but that one's more of a metallic finish. So I thought when it came to that shimmery finish, it reminded me of Mooncat's Pandemonium. So hopefully you can tell from the swatch stick, it does have a more similar finish to Flame Wall than Dear Billy does, but that one is more of that true like orangey red. So because Flame Wall was more of that hot pinky red, I then had to show it next to Holo Taco's Private Villa from the Vacation collection, because that's another hot pink red kind of shade, also filled with reflective glitters. So while they're not 100% exact one-to-one dupes of each other, they are close enough in my opinion. I think the main difference is that Holo Taco is a little bit deeper and also has more reflective glitters. Next for Oh My Unicorn, I knew I had to show this next to Mooncat's Moonfairy, which is a light lavender kind of purple filled with these iridescent flakies that are multicolored and kind of match the colors in Oh My Unicorn. And I also wanted to show it next to Nailed It's Frosted Mallows, which is a previous polished pickup shade, but it's another flaky bomb, this time in a light pink base. So overall, I would say Oh My Unicorn is definitely closer to Moonfairy, but it's not an exact dupe either. I think the base is just a little bit more vibrant and the flakies are also a little bit larger. Next for Satin Starlight, I was immediately reminded of ILNP's Comet and Plus Life Lacquer's Train Graveyard, but they're not close enough that I would call them exact dupes by any means. They're just what I thought of when it came to these really dark blue polishes that have a little bit of a jelly vibe with this colored shimmer in them. Of these two, Comet is definitely the closest, but it's still a little too dark. So then I thought to pull out ILNP's Songbird, which is this much brighter shade of blue. I don't know if this is like a cobalt exactly, but it's just a lot brighter. And I did also want to show it next to Cracked Polish's Midnight Phase, which is more of like a midnight blue crelly. That one definitely looks closer in the bottle, but on the nail, Songbird is definitely the closest, especially if you're just doing 2 coats of Starlight. But the obvious difference is that Songbird and Midnight Phase are missing that reddish shimmer. So then I thought to add ILNP's Bluebell as a topper, but similar to the Fairy Dust and Candlelit Scrawl comparison from before, the shimmer in ILNP is a lot stronger. Then for Magic Eater, I thought that this would be closer to Field of Wonder, being that grassy green kind of color. Obviously they are different with like the shimmers and the flakies in Field of Wonder, but on the nail they are surprisingly similar. I will say that Field of Wonder is definitely a bit darker though. It has less of that jelly feel to it, so I feel like the shimmer just glows more in Magic Eater, so I definitely wouldn't call them dupes. I do also have to show Magic Eater next to KBShimmer's Pull It Together, which is a green reflective glitter type of polish. That one obviously is much lighter though, so definitely not dupes. Some other quick green comparisons are for Mooncat's Serpents of Eden and Holotaco's Peridon't Bother Me. Both of those may have a more similar base color, being that like mid-tone green, but they're just so overpowered with that golden shimmer that they just wouldn't really be considered dupes in my opinion. Even though Holotaco does have green reflective glitter, it's more yellow leaning overall, so maybe Mooncat is closer, but it's also a bit darker too. And then I remembered Cirque's Ethel from the Kelly Marissa collab a couple of years ago. That one again is not in my collection anymore, so I just have the swatch stick of it, but it's definitely the closest to being a dupe. They have very similar green colored jelly bases. I think the pink shimmer is just a little stronger in Cirque. Moving on to Frost Shard, I also had to show this next to Pond-ering from the previous collection. That one is a light blue jelly base filled with shimmers and holographic glitters, so it's not the exact same kind of components in here, but kind of similar color vibes at least. I think the main focus for Pond-ering is the blue holographic glitters, while the focus in Frost Shard is obviously those iridescent flakies. So for more light blue flaky comparisons, I of course have to show this next to a couple of Mooncat shades like Wish I Hadn't Cried So Much from the Alice in Wonderland collab, and If Frogs Had Wings, which is a Dearly Departed shade. I actually thought it was gonna be like a close enough dupe for If Frogs Had Wings, but seeing them on the nail, I think Frost Shard is actually closer to Wish I Hadn't Cried So Much because it's more of like that true jelly base, while the base in Frogs is a little bit more of like a milky, buildable crelly. And lastly, for Fallen Stars, I don't have another gold holographic star glitter topper, so I thought the closest that I could compare it to was Starry's Golden Starlight, which is a gold reflective glitter topper. So this may not be super helpful, but if you happen to have this Starly and you have like little loose glitters, you can pretty much recreate this Sylvanclaw. I think the only other thing it's missing is the silver or gold holographic dusting, but that's easy to add. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Sylvanclaw's Into the Wizard's Keep collection. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on this release because I thought it was so beautiful. Like I mentioned in my last review with Sylvanclaw, I'm just so here for the vibes. Like I love anything whimsical and fantasy. So I thought this was another beautifully curated collection. I love the mix of finishes, the different colors. Even though some of the colors are kind of similar to the previous collection, they are different enough that I don't think they're like duping themselves necessarily. It's just giving different options for the finishes, which I do appreciate, but I can see how it might be kind of repetitive when you do the same sort of color in a slightly different finish. But that being said, I am partial to these kind of colors, especially the lighter ones, like those two flakies. I love them. And going back to the formulas, as you saw, I just had another really great experience with these, similar to the first collection that I reviewed, even though those had the flat edge kind of brush, which, you know, is not my favorite, but it's not as bad as like a very skinny brush, like an old Essie or old China Glaze brush, for example. So like I mentioned in my last review, I feel like these polishes just have such a beautiful kind of formula that no matter what kind of brush it has, it's gonna apply so nicely. But obviously, I'm very happy to see them switch over to the rounded paddle brush. It just makes painting even easier and even more effortless. So I just really think this is such a perfect brand, especially for like beginners getting into different kind of indie finishes. But yeah, overall, this was a fantastic collection and I would love to know your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you
so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!